Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Miguel Chiau. I am from Mozambique, and I am a Mastercard Foundation second-year student at Quest University, Canada. And I am the future of Africa. In 2011, The Economist raised the idea of Africa rising. They looked into countries' GPD as indicators of economic growth in Sub-Saharan Africa, and were optimistic about Africa's future. Since then, there have been several opinions in the topic, some defending that Africa is no longer rising due to the late unsuccessful attempts to boost the economy and marks of bad governance. When thinking about Africa rising, I came across various discussions in which my continent was presented as hopeless and totally trapped in poverty. But I still felt the need to write on Africa rising regardless, because I do believe that Africa still has a huge potential for development. It is true that some urgent issues have negatively impacted this process. Political instability and fight for democratic governance, peace and security crisis, and the past health and humanitarian crisis due to Ebola virus spreading in West Africa. Although these constitute barriers and challenges for development and demand some level of expertise and critical approaches, as a young African man, I am passionate about Africa and its issues. I believe that the idea of Africa being a continent totally trapped in poverty with an uncertain future is just one side of the story. There are areas promising to unleash the potential of Africa: entrepreneurship, education, and leadership. But there is no denying that Africa has some hurdles to overcome to truly rise. When I look to the African sphere, I think leadership needs to be rooted in moral principles of justice and human rights. Africa needs leaders who are committed to foster development in the light of democracy. Nelson Mandela, an exemplary good leader who left a legacy of leadership being expressed in terms of Ubuntu, an African philosophy meaning humanity towards others that serve as a light to an open society. Ubuntu implies that if people are treated well, they are more likely to perform better. As Desmond Tutu once said, "My humanity is bound up on yours, so we can all be human together." That's for me what defines Africa rising. In terms of education, I believe that disparities of gender balance regarding education access constitute a keystone, and educating women in Africa will serve as a step forward towards gender equity in the continent. Considering the fact that in southern sub-Saharan Africa, most households are women-led, educating women will be an effective mechanism to guarantee that the future generations have a role model. After all, it is commonly said that when you educate a woman, you educate a village. Women would be skilled to compete for jobs in the employment market and set up an example in their households, a role model to follow. I myself come from such a one household, led by a single mom. When I was in primary school, my mother worked there as a janitor. And I saw my mother deciding to go back to school on her late earlies in order to progress in her career. That also served as a motivation for many of our female co-workers to go back to school as well. My mom is a role model in my life, and she taught me that education is in fact a powerful tool that could define my future and the future of Africa. So I believe in an Africa where women are no longer marginalized and are given access to a key tool to succeed: education. On the other hand, there is a need of not just educating people and equipping them with skills, but inculcating them ventures for entrepreneurship. A study from the University of South Africa shows that in South Africa, similarly to the rest of Southern Sub-Saharan Africa, the level of unemployment within graduates is slightly higher. But entrepreneurship and small business development are seen as a solution to address this issue. But how do we get there? Higher education institutions in Africa should combine traditional teaching methods with other alternative approaches to stimulate entrepreneurial education. This will develop the skills that are essential for graduates to succeed in the employment market and/or create their own jobs. We see a demand in our society for skilled people for the employment market, but principally for individuals who are able to explore new ventures to generate income for Africa Rising. By focusing on these areas of potential, Africa Rising is a society filled with change makers, able to lead by expressing Ubuntu, where men and women have access to the same opportunities. And education leads to entrepreneurship, which is a powerful tool for development. This is how we realize Africa Rising. Thank you.